Hello.
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 Hello. Welcome, a very warm welcome to the Stream of Truth. I am known by the name of Tassel, Dr. Tassel Faith Shamebrook.
And I am a form called Sean Kelly.
We've been talking a lot about names and labels and how at times I think for you universally, they feel really limiting.
Yeah.
So,
I
yeah.
was joking with Tassel and I said next time she's going to say, hi, I'm Dr. Tassel Faith Shamebrook. And I'm going to say, hi, I'm a broomstick. Just to try to highlight some of the absurdity of our labeling in words.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
it's just all
Maybe
in
we can
fun.
do a show. Maybe we can do a show on that because there's a lot to say.
There's an important thing that recently came through to remind me to be humble in the face of some of those discomforts that arise, which is all who call me by whatever name are mine and dear to me. So basically, sort of divinity saying, if you call me Yahweh, you call me Yeshua, you call me Jesus, you call me the Lord, you call me
Yes.
God, divinity, whatever, the creator, infinite creator, whatever it is, life, the universe, source, whatever you call me, you're mine and dear to me. So that's something that's really humbling to remember, that whatever name someone calls you or word, they can call you, what did I say? A dinkle doodle? A dinky
A,
doodle
you
or
said a
something?
really cute word last night. Dinky doodle.
Yeah, they can call you a dinky doodle and you can say, thank you so much for that. You're mine and dear to me. So, yeah, so anyways, names are funny. Names are
Yeah.
funny.
Maybe we can do a show on that. There's a lot to say there. I've changed my name several times and it's been an interesting experience to go by different names.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's an interesting experience to have like a title, like a doctor and all the
Yeah.
associations with that.
You kind of realize you can just call yourself and be whatever you want. It
Well,
doesn't
it's
truly make
interesting
any
too
difference.
because sometimes others have some discomfort around your name change and
Especially your parents probably like, we named you this, and yeah, there's probably some stuff
yeah,
there too, right?
yeah.
Good morning, Jamie. Thank you for
Um,
joining us.
so today we're talking about reframing narcissism.
Woo!
Woo! A light, juicy topic for Friday
Yeah.
afternoon, morning.
Um,
Let's talk about narcissism, reframing it. But reframing it sounds really positive.
yeah. Yeah. So, a core wound of the sort of divine expression here, sort of what people might call a light worker or someone who's kind of trying to dedicate themselves to peace and loving service, is this rejection of any shadow or darkness, um, or any selfishness. There's a sense in the being that to be selfish is not what they're here to do. Usually, there's still, as we, there's a process to purifying our own sort of distortions, illusions, sometimes which progress into delusion. There's a process to that. And so right now we have a sort of, spiritual pandemic, I would say, of people being unable to not see narcissistic type behavior. So this is behavior that essentially is operating from behavior or thought or values that are operating from a consciousness calibration that's below the frequency of truth. So essentially, the being that is in that narcissistic thing is following more of the animalistic impulse from the lower three chakras, in that moment. And what ends up happening often is we perceive the other being. We are able to see some of these animalistic, narcissistic type traits. We're able to see that they are out for themselves first. And that's uncomfortable to us because we will feel sort of persecuted in that way. We'll often feel that they are trying to take our power from us. Also, we'll feel that's because we're kind of projecting a little bit. But also we're usually, the reason it bothers us is because we have this capacity in us and are actually often acting out of our own animalistic or narcissistic traits, our own selfishness in many ways, our own belief that the human identity here knows what's best for it and deserves to receive that, to control, to put into order, or to make whatever it desires happen. So for example, even the claim that another isn't a narcissist is a narcissistic claim. And so we unknowingly are mirroring narcissism to itself by basically rejecting it as a component to our being that likely we have to look at, which is why it's perturbing us to observe it. And
this is, sorry.
No, that's okay. So what were you going to say?
I'm just noticing in my history that I think at times I have acted narcissistically and not really been aware of it.
Yeah, narcissism doesn't know it's narcissistic. The mind doesn't know that it's being narcissistic. That's the meaning of the "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do" statement of Jesus.
Would it be okay for me to give an example?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being open.
Yeah. Oh, I love sharing my dirty laundry. It's always helpful.
That's how it gets cleaned.
Yeah, exactly. I like sharing the dirty laundry. So I've talked on the stream quite a bit about my divorce custody situation about 5-6 years ago, and how in the beginning I followed this very mainstream process of the battle. Like, we're fighting each other. I'm fighting my husband for custody of my children, and I'm going to fight him for what I want. And that was a disaster and catastrophic and just awful. And then basically my higher self really came in at some point and showed me the way. And I dropped my sword and we did what I call the sacred circle. We came together and really just prayed for the highest and best outcome for the custody situation. And basically a miracle came through. But when I look at my behavior before that, I can see that I was not looking at the situation from a highest and best for all perspective. I was very much looking at it from what is best for me perspective. What do I want as a mother of my children? I want a certain amount of custody. And so it's just super interesting for me to like really see that I was acting very narcissistically. I was acting very much from my ego's agenda without really holding, for instance, my ex-husband's highest and best as well, and my children's highest and best. It was a lot about me, and it's super interesting because even the thumbnail that you made, does it say help me, I think. So when I really dig into what was going on for me, I was in so much pain about like losing my children and not being with my children full time. And this was the sort of failure of my dream for my life. I wanted to be a full-time mom. That was my dream. So I was acting narcissistically from pain, not to try to excuse it, but just try to I'm just understanding what happened. I was really blinded, I would say, by my own pain and my inability to just sit with the pain and move the pain through me and let go of the dream that was not happening. And instead just fighting for what I wanted. So to me, it's kind of interesting to see all that.
Yeah. Yeah. If we can try to take a practice of humility, and we talked about this in other streams, just of noticing that we don't actually know what's best for us. It's actually our narcissistic side. Like, we all have the survival animalistic side that is oriented to our protection and what we need. It's natural to do that. And depending on where people are wounded, that's where they shrink in, and they're disempowered in those areas. So narcissistic expressions start to come out, thoughts or control type manipulative type strategies start to get employed. Anything that is somehow, I know what's best in this area, bend to my will, right? And that's what the thumbnail with the help in front of the face is. They're not able to say, help me. They don't realize that they are acting this way from a place of pain and fear necessarily in the moment. And you can think back to the times you've acted selfishly and realize that it feels a little bad to reflect on it once you see that. And that's just your conscience sort of saying, oh, I was not being service oriented. I was not orienting myself to the highest good. I was orienting myself to my highest good. Which was an illusion that I had created because I believed certain things that were not true.
Yes. Can I jump in real quick around that? And I think I've shared this before, but I had this experience in the middle of my divorce custody situation where I had the opportunity to kind of use a situation against my ex-husband to further my custody. And it involved his mom. And as I felt into it, I just felt gross. I felt unpure. I felt this is not the way. This does not feel highest and best. And I was kind of overcome by guilt and shame and regret at kind of everything I had done up until that point in the situation, where I could see with clear eyes that I was kind of doing whatever I could to just further my case and not really taking into account my ex-husband's feelings and his pain. And, we were both doing it. We both were engaging in this manner. And I was just really overcome by very uncomfortable feelings. And it was through feeling all of that and really seeing that I shifted into this different orientation of highest and best. And that's where I've tried to stay since then. But yeah, even before that, I can see in the rest of my life that I didn't have always a highest and best orientation. I didn't know about that orientation. It seems common sense, but maybe it's partly just the way we're socialized in our society, this capitalistic, me first, achievement oriented culture that is the soil that we're grown in.
Yeah. So the way that I sort of see that is sort of the manifestation of the ego mind that, or the thinking mind that thinks it knows what's best, but on a sort of collective level, which then informs this sort of procession of self-centered type behavior from everyone. it seems to be the norm. When it's like that, that's just an indication, really, that that society at that time is advancing in technology and advancing in thought, but not so much advancing spiritually. There's a balance with that advancement that is sort of intrinsic to the evolution, and it's through these types of basically being led astray from our spirituality as people or as beings that brings us back to it. So the narcissist is essentially unable to ask for help. Basically, they're trying to maintain their power over their reality. They're addicted to that safety of the certainty that they feel that they've been able to claim in their reality some way through whatever behavior it is, and that's how they justify it. Like they'll come up with any excuse to justify it. And then for on the receiving end, for the one who's observing it, they can feel like this is a vampiric type energy here. This is drawing my power from me. The reason that it draws your power from you or feels that way is because you're in opposition and conflict to it. I can't think of the principle. There's a principle in physics that basically the force that you push against something is the force it will use to grow in power. I can't think of what that term is, but if anyone thinks of it, let me know. But there's a term in physics for that. And basically, whatever we resist, we are actually giving our power to because we feel threatened by it. And there's nothing to threaten us. If a narcissistic type manipulation tactic is employed on us, we'll see it. And we don't have to engage, but we also don't have to condemn. And that's really the reframing, is the individual you're observing is scared and in pain. So you can remember when you've been scared and in pain and done stuff that is not, great. And I highly doubt there's anybody here that has zero of those occurrences, in their life that they can reflect on. And, really what the narcissist is asking for is help to see the truth of what they're doing. And you can gently let them know that you're not interested in this game. You don't have to say, I'm not interested in this game. That's going to inspire a fight. It doesn't have to be confrontational in any way. There's no judgment. So if, for example, let's say you have a family member who's helping you in some way, and you start to go down a spiritual path, let's say, and let's just use my situation here. I live with my parents right now. Let's say that they don't do this, but let's say they said, if you keep going this way, we're not going to be able to have you in the house. It would be, of course, their right to do that, and to make a decision like that. But it's coming from a rejection of my being. They don't like what I'm doing. They think what I'm doing is wrong in some way. It's not right. And then they're using the motivation or the reward or blessing of being able to have a place to stay as sort of ammunition to fuel a manipulation tactic to get me to stay. So this is where, your parents can be lovely people that are generally very loving to you and only there to help you. And then that type of behavior might come out. So are they a narcissist? Right? No, that would be very, what's the word, irresponsible to just label them as having a actual mental health disorder. What's happening is just that your sort of beingness is being challenged to maintain course in the face of adversity. That's all that's happening. And then you can make a decision, sort of, to move forward and just say, you're trying to manipulate me, and I feel called on this path, and I feel this path will lead me to peace. And I'm sorry if you don't feel that you wish to support it. It would have been my desire for you to feel supportive of what I'm doing. But if you don't, I accept that. And whatever decision you make, that's up to you. So we can surrender, just that alone will likely make them go, oh, what am I doing? And if it doesn't, and they continue and say that you have to leave, then that's what happens. But Stars in the Sky asked a really good question. Why are narcissists unable to ask for help?
And before we answer that question, I just want to jump in. So I have a PhD in psychotherapy, and in my training, I did a lot of clinical internships in different places, homeless shelters and school systems. And at times I heard other clinicians use terms like the narcissist, the borderline, the bipolar. So referring to people with these labels.
By their pathology, right?
By their quote unquote pathology.
Right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
And of course it's sort of like an easy way to do it. But I didn't find myself so resonant with that. And I always tried to say things like the person who is perhaps displaying certain narcissistic behaviors or whatever. And it's much more cumbersome to say it that way. But I'm really wary of totalizing someone, of yes. These labels can feel very totalizing, that if we say the blankety blank, we're kind of implying like that's all they are, or there can be that implication. So I just wanted to back up and say that for me, at least, I'm more resonant with saying the person who may be displaying some of these tendencies. I know it's very cumbersome to say all that, but I'm just so wary of putting anybody in a box. And of course, there's so many other aspects to these, to anyone besides these certain behavioral presentations. So for me at least, I talk in this more cumbersome way because I feel it's more aligned with the truth for me.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good point. We even the question, why are narcissists unable to ask for help? It's the same reason that when you're in pain and you don't feel safe to ask anyone for help with it, it's the same thing pretty much. But the narcissist is actually not usually aware. I say the narcissist just as we just described, that it's not that way. We shouldn't really talk about it that way, probably. But what I mean when I say the narcissist is just the person who is in a narcissistic expression in that moment.
Yeah.
They're not a narcissist. They're a person and human that's experiencing fear. That's all that's happening.
No one is any one thing.
Right.
Whether it's a positive or a negative, no one is any one thing ever. Yeah. So
basically, the reason that they can't ask for help is basically they've deluded themselves deep enough into this chasm or pit of suffering. Essentially, they don't realize that they're suffering necessarily. Even they also don't feel anything is wrong with their approach. The mind actually does this magnificent, really beautiful, interesting thing where it adjusts episodic memory. The reflection of a narcissistic self-absorbed moment upon a past moment sees it from that perspective and sees all the various affronts to it instead of what it was doing. So it basically it consistently reaffirms its own value and belief in itself as like the thinking mind that controls everything, continually reasserts this belief through observing past memory, and actually distorting it into things that didn't really happen. Basically adding whatever presumptions, assumptions, or conclusions it can about what occurred in order to perpetuate this feeling that I'm in control and others are either against me and I have to subdue them, or others are there for me to move about as my pawns.
Yes, and maybe I can just jump in here.
Yes, survival mechanism. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. From my clinical experience and experiential experience in psychotherapy, and I always lean on this orientation of how does this person's behavior make sense given their context? My understanding of many people who may have these types of behaviors is that they've experienced something in their childhood where their needs were not met. There
Yep.
could be basic needs not met, could have been physical needs not met, could have been emotional needs not met. And so what does one do in that situation? People can go a variety of ways, but one survival mechanism is, okay, my needs are not being met. So I'm going to really, really focus on my own needs to make sure I can survive. The others may not ask for help because that doesn't feel safe.
Yep.
Because that person may have grown up in a context where that wasn't safe, where there wasn't a possibility or a safety to ask for help. So as Sean was saying earlier on, whenever someone is acting in a quote unquote hurtful way, they're acting from hurt. So our compassion and understanding towards them is really being invited. And it's my experience that they've been in a context where things were not safe, where their needs were not met. And this is a survival mechanism, a balancing mechanism to help themselves.
Yeah.
So, and this is so interesting too, because in all what we might call pathological behavior, it's always a corrective mechanism to help the self to survive a situation that is not safe. Always. And I'll just say one example of this is in schizophrenic behavior. Often if a person is exhibiting schizophrenic behavior and then they go into some type of facility and they get help and their behavior shifts, but then they go back into their family system, the schizophrenic behavior can arise again because it's a response to what's going on in the family system. It is not native to the person. It is native to the environment. It exists relationally. And this is a really interesting topic. Maybe we should do a whole show on this, but most of our behaviors exist relationally. Most of our behaviors are not native to ourself. They don't grow in ourselves. They grow in response to the situations we're in. So I just wanted, as we're reframing, to understand that narcissistic behavior as well is a relational behavior. It's a relational behavior.
Yeah. We were born as a divine, innocent soul, blank slate, or tabula rasa. We had no idea really what was going on other than whatever karmic sort of entanglements or energies were with us to sort of inform what our experience was likely to be. But we didn't have beliefs. We didn't have ideas of what was good or bad. All of that is learned and, like Tassel said, relational, and basically just ways we can know ourselves. So when you're experiencing a narcissistic type behavior from another, the divinity in them is asking you to notice it, and to notice and accept that this is what's happening here. I'm not threatened and I love you. That will stop any type of energetic exchange happening. In fact, it flips it around, and the only really two things will happen. The person who is trying to take energy unconsciously, usually they don't really realize they're on the energetic level that this is really happening, usually because they're not in tune with that frequency of stuff because they're in that state. But on the other side, on the side that's maybe more intuitive, maybe more in tune, they feel drained, they feel pulled down or something. But the pulling down is because they feel that that they're being threatened in some way, basically. And so if we can realize that they're not threatening us, there's nothing to be threatened. We don't have to participate in any of this. All we can just give them love. That's really all they're asking for is love. They try to assert love in themselves through the use of force, whereas love is just pure power and just emanates freely. But it's the confusion of the selfish sort of egoic mind that says, no, I have to find love by making it come to me in some way through some sort of emotion that's based on our positionality in moral dilemmas in ourselves. So we'll have a positionality of some kind that something is good and something is bad. And typically in that narcissistic type framing, it's this is good because it's good for me. And that's really the focus. And all we have to do is say, no, thank you. I love you and I appreciate you. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to defend ourselves. We don't have to do anything at all. We feel like we do. We feel like we have to. I'm going to establish my boundaries. We can do that. Whatever feels best. I'm just suggesting that it's a freer place to be, a more peaceful place to be unmoved by these types of experiences, these encounters, that you just see them for what they are. It's much like a child who is wanting ice cream, but it's time, you just made dinner and you're like, it's time for dinner. But I want ice cream. Yeah, but you're going to have dinner. Here's dinner. So the selfish sort of side of the personality is like, give me love this way. And you're like, no, I'm going to give it to you like this. I'm going to give it to you in peace. And that dissolves it, because they're either going to go, whoa, this blows my mind. I can't manipulate this person. Even me trying to manipulate them, they just respond with love. They must be full of garbage, or they must be special, and they'll feel attracted. This is where that empath, narcissist type dynamic can form from, where the empathic, very sensitive person feels called to constantly reaffirm the narcissistic individual or narcissistic sort of components to the other, because they care and they want to uplift. And so this starts to form this dichotomy, I guess, of sensitivity and emotion and compassion, with the opposite of that, which is trying to pull that out. And so one will feel drained and wonder why their partner never stops this type of behavior. And they're also usually, they have a lot of that behavior in themselves that they aren't seeing. So,
Yes.
that's there's lots of stuff here, lots and lots of stuff here.
If it's okay, I'd like to share just an example that I experienced this week around this. I was interacting with someone in a business way, and it was around money, me paying for some services, and the response of the other person to me around the money issue felt very self-centered around the money that we were talking about for the services. It felt that this person was not considering my situation and sort of my needs. And it felt a bit narcissistic. And I felt very, my first response, I felt very, like my human felt very hurt and very kind of like, this is not resonant with me, this type of behavior. And I felt kind of depressed, like, oh, the like sort of the selfishness, I felt yucky about it. And I sort of wanted to distance myself from this person. And I kind of did not want to do business with this person because of this. And I kind of sat with all of that. And I ended up arriving to a place where I felt like that is not highest and best. I could see when I sat with it a bit more that the person was acting out of fear. And I could see that then I was also acting out of fear myself and judgment towards the person. And what I ended up doing was I ended up just acquiescing to what they wanted money-wise, because I knew that it felt very important to them. And I knew they were acting out of fear and that it was okay. I didn't feel I was being taken advantage of because I understood the place they were coming from. And I wanted to just give them love, basically. And then I also decided that maybe in the future, after this interaction, I might not do another interaction with them again, but I didn't need to completely back out of this interaction. And I guess what I'm saying is I just sat with my own uncomfortable feelings and wanted to, in the end, give love and then set boundaries as well going forward. But that ended up feeling the most aligned to me, was just really recognizing this person is in fear and they're not able to see my side of things or to take into account my need. They're just not able to. They're kind of blinded by their fear right now. And that's
Yeah.
okay. And that's okay. And I'm going to give love here. And then I'm gonna maybe not engage in this the next time, but I'm going to end this with love.
James said something nice and interesting. So he said, just because a narcissist was hurt does not make it okay for them to be like this to their empath child. And so I'll just say that I honor your experience and honor where you're coming from. Nothing that we're suggesting is talking about condoning any type of behavior. Forgiveness does not condone what was done. Forgiveness illuminates what was done into divinity through surrender, to understand that what was done was not done to me. It was done as an expression of divinity here, so I may know myself. The forgiveness principle is not applied to let them off the hook for anything. It's not applied to condone behavior or say anything's okay or to be passive. Forgiveness is applied to free yourself from the trauma that you've endured in this scenario. So what anyone has done from a narcissistic type place is not relevant to you. It does not harm you because you're not harmable when you've forgiven. If you haven't forgiven, then it just hurts. And it sounds like I'm saying that everything that they did is okay. And so there's a clear misunderstanding here of the teaching itself, which is that they are innocent as you are, and both of you have forgotten. And James, I'd like to say as well that it's the narcissistic ego side of you, which is rejecting them narcissistically. This is important to notice in ourselves, that when we reject another, we are rejecting ourselves. We're rejecting divinity itself. And it's because we're judging. Judge not, lest ye be judged, is the simplest way to say, when you judge anybody for anything, it just feels bad. It will feel bad every time, always, eventually. In the moment of judgment, it can feel nice because we've aggrandized. Look how better I am. Look how much better I am. I'm an empath and I care and I love everyone. Doesn't that sound narcissistic? It's an aggrandizement of self that is unhealthy and will eventually be seen through. So the teaching is not to forgive and go, oh, it's okay for you to do this. It's okay for you to continue whatever you're doing. I condone it. In fact, please go do more. It's not like that. It's forgiving to free yourself from being enslaved to these ideas that they're somehow harming you. And so I only say this to really try to highlight that it's not about what they do or don't do. It's not really about their evolution. This is about our healing of ourselves. And if we wish to, we can participate in a deeper forgiveness and upliftment of the narcissistic individual if we are willing to, in forgiveness and love, approach them with that energy and uplift them. They can, that behavior, just as our selfish behavior can be seen and let go of, theirs can too. They just need basically somebody to accept them unconditionally, continuously. And that will eventually show them that they don't have to put on all the airs that they've been hiding behind, really. So it's our choice, and I'm not trying to push anyone into any particular modality or trying to push anyone to forgive. Forgiveness occurs when it's naturally kind of done, right? When we're done with the torment of what's occurred, we forgive it. But until we're ready to forgive, there's still stuff in that experience that we're looking at. So whatever we're at with that is perfect. And it becomes a gift. After forgiveness, the whole experience is a gift.
Yeah, Sean, you and I have talked a lot about how there may be stages to this whole journey. And I'll just speak from my own experience with some family members who displayed narcissistic behavior for me as a child. For me, just to share part of how I moved through all of it, to me, there were many stages on this journey. And one of the stages was really just seeing the truth, seeing, oh, look at this behavior. And it has been difficult for me as a person to live with this behavior. So first it was just really seeing the truth, like kind of waking up out of the illusion or the dream or what I wanted to happen, the rose-colored glasses, taking off the rose-colored glasses and really seeing, oh, what really was the truth of what happened here? The truth, I'm kind of putting that in quotes, and feeling empowered and feeling it's important for me to set boundaries. And it's important for me to call this out, at least to myself, that this was not highest and best. All of this is in quotes. And to move through that journey and to feel everything and to feel the outrage and to feel, yes, it's not okay. This is not highest and best. To feel all of that, to feel the anger, to feel everything. And then, at least on my journey, once I kind of felt all of that, there was a lot more peace. And it wasn't that I had to do anything to forgive. It just, all of those more uncomfortable emotions had moved through me and had been integrated, and I was left with peace. And I often had set boundaries with, in particular, one family member of mine, because I didn't know how to handle the behavior. It just kept feeling hurtful to me. And then actually it was with Sean's help that I did reach a place where I could interact with this person, even when they were interacting in narcissistic, somewhat hurtful behaviors towards me. And I could be love back to them. But it took a long time, and it took a traversement of many different stages to get there.
Yes.
And the the overall understanding that I hold now is all of it was perfect because it grew me, it expanded me. And I even see the person who took on this role for me as taking on a great sacrifice incarnatively to play this role with me so that I could come back to myself and know that I am love no matter what is happening around me. And so I ended up seeing all of it as a tremendous gift.
Yep.
But there's lots of stages along that. And whatever stage, James, you or anyone else listening, you are in, that is perfect and beautiful and to be honored. To whatever is arising in you is to be honored, and it's perfect. Whatever you are feeling is perfect and to be honored.
I could feel the, just reading his comment. Actually, I shouldn't say his. Sorry for my political correctness. I should say their comment, I think. But I could feel the anger, right? The anger there, the pain that's there. And I honor it deeply. I know it. I know it. And, like Tassel said, it's stages. The first stage usually is to try to use a little bit of reason to, or this was a stage that's helpful for me, to do what Tassel and I were saying about how we just look at ourselves. We don't know what we're doing until after, and we look at it, like that's the same thing that everyone else is doing here too. So actually in the moment of what they're doing, they're very ignorant of what they're doing. To us, it's self-evident. To us, we're like, it's very clear. Why can't they see that behavior is not very harmonious? But they can't see what they haven't seen. They have to see it. So and just like, some lessons, I'm sure everyone has this experience where like, oh my gosh, I've been ignoring this cycle of lessons that's just been coming and coming and coming. And I just keep doing the same kind of mistake. It's not a mistake, but I keep, in my ignorance of what's going on here, I keep kind of repeating the same patterning, which results in a similar outcome that isn't great, either in my feelings or actually in the world. And so we can notice that basically Michael White's narrative therapy approach that Tassel talks about often, which is sort of explaining their behavior a little, not condoning it, not making it like okay, but just trying to understand where they have come from. They've been brought up somehow, either in trauma or just conditioning through being taught this way, that this is how you live. They actually also see all others and presume they're doing the same thing. So essentially, they're entirely innocently ignorant of what's going on. So that can bring us to a level of, okay, they didn't know what they're doing, but still, it hurt a lot, right? And so then we can start to feel into that and start to try to let go of some of the rage, like some of the pain. We could feel it, let it come through us, feel it all.
Yeah. And I would say, like, at least for me and the work I do with clients, to me, we don't have to effort anything. We don't have to try to let go. For me personally, I feel you can just feel it. You can honor it. Honor the rage, honor the anger. It will let go naturally when it has been let go of naturally. We don't have to force anything. It's really an honoring and a trusting of whatever is arising is perfect, and give ourselves permission to fully feel it, fully feel it. Then it will naturally dissolve or be integrated. And another point I'd like to make here is that this took me a long time to really land on this, that we're socialized to think like our parents or our caretakers are supposed to like be wise or be anything. And they may just be very wounded individuals from their own life experience. And you, as the child, may be the one bringing the light to them. You may actually be the teacher to them. We are socialized to think our parents are like the teachers to us, or that they hold the wisdom. But it seems like spiritually, it's actually the children who come in that end up often being the teacher to the parent, that we may be the one to show them grace, to show them wisdom, to show them the way.
Mm-hmm.
So although they may, ideally, at least hopefully physically take care of us to some degree, and maybe that obviously isn't always the case, but we may be the one to emotionally guide them, to spiritually guide them, that in some ways we can think of them as our children, as our of us as the shepherd of them, and just sort of, and it can just go both ways. And there's certainly probably aspects where it goes both ways in a lot of ways. But backing up that everyone is just a being here in their own incarnative path with their own wounding. We're all just beings, and our parents may not be able to show us maybe what we ideally would have wanted, but they're offering us such an opportunity to grow and expand and come into so many gifts through the process.
Yes, and the experience that the parents offering us is usually a few orders of magnitude easier than what they went through.
So true. So true.
And,
so true.
And we can appreciate just that this poor soul in its innocence has felt and become sort of tarnished in its expressions through its own pain. So we can see that, and then we can also notice that in every moment, whether we are seeing ourselves as a teacher or a student, truly both occurring simultaneously. The parent teaches us about something, even if they're being narcissistic and teaching us about selfishness. We're still observing selfishness and learning of that, and they're teaching us that, and then we may teach them peaceful response. So this learning and teaching is whenever you're interacting with another being. Jesus said, when two or more gather, I'm with you. And that's what sort of this means, that divinity is with you. Even though on the surface, there's two forms engaged in role play, cosplay, you could call it, what the kids get into these days, which I'll probably do some of that too, dress up like Gandalf or something. But they're forms just playing with each other to learn. That's what's happening here. That's sort of the primary thing that's evolution is just growth and learning. And you can just notice both are teaching each other, although some of the lessons are not lessons we are super excited about. Just like at school, there's some subjects we really like, and then there are some subjects we're not into so much, and it's a very similar type of path. And like Tassel said, there's no rushing to it. You actually cannot rush your spiritual evolution, really. What happens if you do that is you just go way out of balance, which is basically what happened to me. So so whatever part of the path you're at is perfect. And whenever I am sharing sort of anything that has to do with forgiveness or peace, it's never ever about sort of moral judgment of what is right and wrong. It's a blanket of grace and mercy for the innocent soul that you're observing, and including yourself. And that's all it's about. It has nothing to do with what occurred here with the forms and their interplay.
Yes, I think what we talk so much about on the stream is the human self and our God self, and to honor what the human self is experiencing. Could be pain, could be fear, could be guilt, could be any of those uncomfortable emotions, could be all the more comfortable emotions too, but to honor the human self who's leading the incarnative experience. Without the human self, there wouldn't be anything to expand with. So the human self, to me, is to be so honored, so honored.
Yeah.
But at the same time, where all of us are being invited to also embody our God self, which can see with eyes of compassion, which can see with eyes of forgiveness, which can see with eyes of context. So we embody our God self towards our human self, giving them everything they need: unconditional love, acceptance, guidance, hope, compassion, grace, all of it. And then, as much as we can as well, giving it to others and establishing whatever we need to do to move forward in the highest and best, so that we're not traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, to me at least, this constant honoring of both the human self and their experience and our God self. Because if I feel like if we're denying one of them, we're denying the dual experience in a way that we're having.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe that's not the right word, dual. I know that maybe means duality, but there's a lot going on. There's different layers going on.
That's the best way I would say to look at it, is that there's different layerings.
Yeah.
It's all the same experience.
Yeah.
But it's different layerings. However we choose to look at it. I like to look at it like Sean's my baby, right? Sean's my baby, and I listen to what my baby says to me. I hear it, and then I choose. I don't choose. I let the path that feels best just emerge naturally. I don't choose anything. The mind can't choose in any real proper way. The creator chooses. So what we do is kind of notice that there's a piece of me that's stuck in the human. That's sort of, how do I describe this? So the human has all these feelings coming up. The feelings are like your compass in many ways. And so if you're not feeling them, you're wandering around in the woods or a dark cave without looking at your compass. The feelings guide you towards the attraction fields or your avoidances and your fears. Like, it guides you to these and away from these things. And so it's very important to honor them. And what ends up happening, you honor them enough, the human self starts to feel safe enough that the sway of emotion doesn't, they rise sort of to the surface of the sea like a cork, and they just bob up and down with the wave of emotion. They're no longer so much perturbed by what's going on, because they've surrendered and forgiven that this too is challenging, or this too is lovely, and everything becomes an equally sort of omnipotent, benevolent presence of just what is, which is perfection and love. That's sort of the goal, but there's so many layers to getting there. And at first, as we move up this staircase in our ascension pathways, or just our self-healing, we could call it, balancing, whatever we want to call that, there are stages to it. And for the appropriate time, we're going to have a lot of emotion, and we're going to have to learn how to feel it instead of pushing it away. Pushing it away is inviting it to sit in us. So
yeah. And for me, at least, I kind of like this idea of just thinking of life as a benevolent classroom. Maybe classroom isn't quite the right word. I have some negative associations from school with that word, but like a benevolent adventure, maybe that would be a better term. that on an adventure, there's going to be discomfort at times. There are going to be things that come up that are unexpected, that could be painful, that could be scary. But that there's this faith that in the end, as I move through my benevolent adventure, I'm going to receive so many gifts, and I'm going to have the time of my life, and I'm going to expand in ways I had never imagined before if I just stayed like on my couch and not partaken in this benevolent adventure.
Mm-hmm.
So our interpersonal relationships, I think we can all see as benevolent adventures.
Yeah.
We don't always know what's going to happen. We don't always know what might arise in us. Sometimes some really uncomfortable things arise in us. But I think if we really look back at all of these relationships or all of our life situations, we can see that even like through the discomfort, gifts came and expansions came and grace came and compassion came. And in the end, your remembering of yourself, which is a way to look at it, just you're coming back to yourself, you're remembering of all that you are, which really is just love and faith, is really the greatest gift of the adventure you could get. It really isn't about, oh, that relationship was really easy, or that relationship was really comfortable, or that relationship was really safe. It's certainly nice to have those experiences for the human. But really, the greatest treasure in the end is the expansion of your own consciousness and the remembrance of who you really are, which is really just love.
Yeah, if a really simple tactic, whenever anyone's doing something that you're not sure about, might come across narcissistic, whatever it is. It doesn't mean they're a narcissist, just it's something that you don't like. You can try to just look past the mask, look past the costume of the human, look past the role play that's happening, and see the divinity that's expressing. See the divine, innocent sort of child that's there. See them as your son or daughter. In that way, obviously not in every way, but see them the way that you may have an unconditional attachment and love to your son or daughter, the way that you just feel called to serve them. Now, this doesn't mean, like I said, it doesn't mean we just adhere to whatever whims they have, because there's a part of us that is aware that what they're asking for is not highest and best, or doesn't seem to be quite appropriate here. But we can respond to them from our divine place and respond to their divinity instead of responding to their mask. And if we can do that and find a consistent practice in that, we'll start to see the way that they come back after that shift, I think. And we don't even actually have to say anything at all. That's the other thing. If somebody says something wacky to you, you don't even have to respond to them. There's a lot of things we feel we must do in these situations that we don't have to do at all. If we can start to notice that, then we can realize we can just get to choose how we want to express back, if we want to express back, or we can just beam them love and walk away.
Yeah. And I have really noticed that with people close to me who may have displayed narcissistic behaviors, and I've said that I too have displayed narcissistic behaviors. I think we all do. The more I moved through all the feelings and forgiveness came, that's the way I like to say it. I moved through the feelings and then forgiveness came. I didn't have to do anything. I just had to feel everything. And I was able to really just feel love and compassion towards them and try to not judge, and just to see them as, they're doing the best they can. They seem to shift. Mm-hmm. As within, so without. So as I'm holding love, forgiveness, compassion within me towards them, they are showing me similar energy. So it's just really interesting that this holographic universe that we're living in, as within, so without.
Yeah, and part of the fun thing about it is that sometimes their expressions aren't even changing that much. But because we've forgiven it and healed it in ourselves, we don't even notice it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean anything to us anymore.
Yeah,
so
it's
if
like you see beyond it. You just see beyond. You see the divinity.
I'd like to say, like, I get, not every day, but fairly regularly, I'm pretty lambasted by someone. Usually a stranger on the internet that's sort of watched a video of mine, or I don't know, but has sort of had an episode in themselves and then seen me as some type of villain or something like this, and then attacked. So I get this a lot, just from strangers, and also in my life in the past, I've got it. Um, you know, whenever we're in that villain, uh, hero,
Victim
role,
triad.
that the triangle of, that's sort of all of our egoic roles tend to fall into one of these things. Whenever we're in any of that, then we're gonna feel that we have to save ourselves from this person and defend ourselves, and really we just have to smile, and we're free from it. We don't have to so much worry about it. And Tassel mentioned that if you just feel your feelings, forgiveness seems to be a sort of this self-evident or emerging result of that. And that's what I meant when I said that you'll forgive when you're ready and have reviewed it to the degree that you are meant to review it. You can't forgive until you've seen the stuff you need to see, usually. So, basically, we can't rush it. So it's okay if we feel lots of hostility or anger in us, but we just have to keep noticing this and, like, why do I feel hostile? Oh, because I feel I have to defend myself. What am I defending myself from? Somebody's words? They don't have to hurt me. They don't have to. But that's
Yeah.
a period of learning that, there was a question about how do we block others' energy? We block others' energy by accepting it as it is and knowing it doesn't disturb us. There's no block necessary. If we block another's energy, we're saying, I'm threatened, stop. And we can do that. And that's all you have to really do to block their energy, is to say no thank you. But we don't have to do any of that. We can just sort of be okay with the way that they are being, even if it's very strange to us, odd behavior, mysterious, curious behavior. We can just be okay with it and let it go.
And I think just honoring wherever we are on the stages of the journey. As I said, sort of in the middle of the stream, I know I went through many stages on this journey, including at times feeling like it was appropriate and highest and best for me to not be in contact with a certain family member. And then later on, it felt like I could be, because my consciousness had sort of changed at that point. So I just think, I always say this, a deep honoring of yourself. Start with a deep honoring of whatever is arising in you, whatever you are experiencing, and honor that. And just know you're on the path. Things are going to shift. Let yourself feel, have faith in the process. You will be led on the path by spirit on this path. And I think just the last thing I might want to say about reframing narcissism is just to see any type of behavior like this is just, to me, it's wounded behavior. The person has been hurt in some way and is responding what we might think as hurtfully, but it's acting from a wound. And can we hold compassion in the end for that?
Right. Yeah. Just to end on that, just it's no different, really no different than if you're walking down the street and you see somebody on the side of the road with a broken leg. They're in pain. Maybe they're cursing. Um, what do we do? We're probably going to feel called to at least try to get an ambulance to them, or to do something, or to find them water, or to do something, right? We're probably going to feel to do that. And we're trying to notice that that's kind of the same thing. The other person that's exhibiting a narcissistic type trait is in an emotional or thought based pain, and it's not any less real than a physical pain on the body. And if a child came up to us and was in pain, we would want to try to help them if they wanted our help, right? And that's the other thing too. Sometimes they don't want our help, and if they don't want our help, then okay, that's okay too. So
love and grace to yourself, if you're able to, love and grace towards others as well, but you start with love and grace towards yourself. And yeah,
and if, like Tassel said, if things are really uncomfortable, like, just back away from it. Give yourself space. You do have to take care of yourself first, so that you can be your right self, your aligned self in future moments, to serve better, to be more loving, more service oriented, more showing up and bringing your dreams together. It's through doing that all of your sort of dreams and gifts just start falling into your lap, which Tassel and I have just been watching happen with us. The more work we do on ourselves, the more healing, the more just really beautiful, weird, magical things start happening out of nowhere without any effort. And we realize that it doesn't matter so much what we do, as long as we are learning and expanding and forgiving ourselves and empowering ourselves while remaining humble, and all of that. So there's balance in everything. And it's a journey. It doesn't have to happen in a moment, but it can happen in a moment. We can forgive all in a moment and let it all go in a moment. That's a potentiality that's there. And that's why sometimes when we're talking about these things, I noticed Tassel's taking a very gradual sort of approach, which is very gentle. And my approach can be more like up at a higher a higher order of truth that sort of denies some of the steps, or sounds like it may be denying the steps. The only reason I think that happens, and I'm really grateful that she can provide some of this gentleness that sometimes escapes me a little bit. I'm really grateful, because it's really helpful to have both components. Both are very valid. But basically the process can happen in an instant. Which is what I experienced in my Kundalini awakening. In a moment, without any spiritual training at all, I was awakened. So, and then these concepts started to just come into me. I started to just realize all of this stuff and realize that I was meant to teach it, etc. So these things, it's all perfect. It's all that's kind of the end of it.
Just trust life.
Trust life.
And trust your feelings, and trust your soul that is in your higher self that's guiding you through all this. And it's all is well, all is okay. Honor everything.
You don't have to give your power away to anybody. And it's the resistance that is actually giving the power away. We don't have to resist them. We just have to tell them, I'm not doing that. I'm not playing this game. I love you. See you later.
One of my favorite prayers that I use a lot is show me the way when I don't know what to do and I'm suffering. Spirit, myself, we are spirit. Please just show me the way. Be with me. Show me the way forward. Show me the way. Show me the way.
Yeah. Show me the way. That's, and I was talking to Tassel, if you do this and just look up to the sky and ask for guidance, you're aligning your spine. These chakra centers will flow more aligned. Usually you'll be able to hear what's the way, or the calling for the way is more pure. And what ends up happening is usually right after that, you get the answer. And then right after that, the ego explains why that's not the answer. So you can notice this little thing. And so if you're ever stuck, I invite everybody to not seek an answer from some teacher or some book, or, you know, just ask yourself, like look up to the sky and say, Creator, help me see the truth here. Help me see what I need to see so that I can illuminate what needs to be illuminated. And just trust that that will happen. Okay. All right. Good talk. And thank you so much for all the chat. There's been so much chat. Lots of people here today.
Awesome.
I
Thank you
didn't really
so
see
much.
how much people, but there's a whole bunch of new names. Lots of people here. So really grateful for all of your attention and all your presence with us. Really grateful for that.
Yes. And just sending everyone so much love and blessings. And you're all magnificent. We're all on this wild adventure of life. And we're all just really walking each other home. And just thank you for being with us.
And thank you to the narcissists as well.
To those displaying narcissistic behavior.
I only said that because of that. Exactly. Thank you for saying, I knew you would say that. That's perfect. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to those who hurt us. Thank you to those who love us, because it's all just love in the end anyway.
You know what I feel right now? Do you know that scene from Bridesmaids when the two women are making speeches? Like, do you know what I mean?
I've seen the movie, but it was so many years ago.
Just like each one of us like saying one more thing, one more thing.
Yeah, like we both like to talk, I think, and we both have lots to say. So yeah, that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
I love
it's
it.
really cute. It's funny.
All right, we'll
right.
see you later. Thank you again for watching, and these bridesmaids are gonna take off now.
These broomsticks.
These broomsticks. Take care, everyone.